Hey guys, Sean C. Phillips here. Welcome to my May 14th DVD update. I talk about other DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, guys, enjoy these update videos. Definitely give this video a thumbs up. Leave me comments below what you guys thought of the titles I checked out in this update. Any titles coming up which you guys will review for future updates. Some of the things you guys have picked up recently. Now, the first one I got from Shout Factory Scream Factory line. This is one I had never seen before. I had a DVD of it in the past, and somehow I never had watched this. This is the prequel to Silence of the Lambs, the movie before Silence of the Lambs. They also remade this movie, I think like 2002, I think. And it was called Red Dragon. But this was, the book was actually called Red Dragon. This is Michael Mann's film Manhunter with really cool, great new artwork on this one. Love the cover on this. This stars Brian Cox as the Hannibal character as opposed to Anthony Hopkins, who went on to play him in the future films. This is a really cool movie. Really was surprised how much I really love this movie. It has on here, though, the director's cut of this movie, which is a couple minutes longer, and then the theatrical cut of the film. The director's cut, too, has like a bunch of different scenes that were changed around, some that were taken out, a couple of different things that were added as well. And it has on here as well a number of different interviews and features on here. Interviews with the composer, interviews with the cast and crew. It has on here with the cinematographer. But basically the movie, though, is about this guy who was a retired FBI agent who, the last case that he was on, it kind of drove him crazy. The guy had attacked him, and he got really injured by it, and he ended up basically going kind of crazy because of the whole thing. It kind of drove him crazy, so he ended up having to get out of what he was doing and just basically retire because he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And one of the people that he worked with came back around and, trying to persuade him to come back and help him find the killer in this, the Tooth Fairy killer, which is played by Tom Newland, who was in Last Action Hero and House of the Devil. He is so cool in this movie, extremely creepy, and his sequences in this movie, scenes in the movie, were some of my favorite stuff in the movie. But he's basically trying to track him down. And he ends up going and talking to, getting persuaded to go back. Reluctantly, his family doesn't want him to do it. His wife is like really worried that he's going to go crazy again by getting back into this life of doing this again. But he ends up trying to do anything he can to try and put this case together because nobody's having any luck. They have no leads. They can't figure anything out. They keep missing evidence. Like, he thinks of things that no one else does about, checking for fingerprints on the eyelids of the victims because he's going around killing these families and all. He's like, has no, this Tooth Fairy killer is killing all these people. And he ends up even talking to Hannibal, who's one of the people he put away that was like a person they never thought that anyone would find. And he's kind of trying to help him, get back in the mindset of finding this guy. Of course, so Hannibal is actually talking to this guy and writing to him on like toilet paper, and they're trying to figure out how they're communicating back and forth to each other. So it's a whole thing of trying to figure out that as well. The movie too has kind of a vibe a little bit because it was made around the same time as Body Double, so it kind of has that feel to the movie, like a really cool vibe. Like, the music was really cool in this movie. I just loved everything about this. I thought this was a really cool movie, and like I said, one that I can't believe I hadn't watched until now. And as much as I love Silence of the Lambs, there's something really cool about this one, and definitely holds up on his own. The next one, this is when I talked to Kristina Klebe about this one at a convention. How much I was looking forward to seeing this one. It stars Kristina Klebe and Gene Jones, who was in The Sacrament, which I love that movie, and he was in, Hateful Eight recently, and he basically plays a guy who was in, Vietnam, and he was captured in Vietnam, and he was tortured there, and because of that, he's had all these kind of flashbacks and incidents because of that, but he lives on his own. He's an older guy, and he ends up having a heart attack, and after he ends up having this heart attack, because he goes out and takes his gun out when these kids are out there picking on this one guy, and he has a heart attack or like a stroke kind of thing that happens to him, and it really, because of that, he starts to suffer from early signs of dementia, and he's still having, on top of it, having these flashbacks, which are making things worse for him. The flashbacks are getting worse. So he basically, though, his family comes back around, and they end up hiring Kristina Klebe, who comes there as she comes from the hospital saying that she's coming there to do checkups and make sure he's okay, and they end up hiring her as the live-in nurse to take care of him. But there's something very off about her character. She just seems very cold to him and really odd with what's going on, and like she just, like, out of the blue just starts injecting him with things. If he kind of like gives her lip and starts talking, she just ejects him with needles, and it's just really weird. It's one of those movies where you kind of start piecing together things, and it also takes like a turn that you're not going to expect with her character and exactly it has some twist to it that I think it will surprise some of you, that you won't think maybe what is the reasoning behind everything. But I really thought this was a pretty cool movie, though. The next one, this is another one I had never seen before, and it stars Patty Duke and Richard Thomas, who was in, I think he was in the Waltons, but I always think of him from the movie It. It's one of those movies that definitely needs a Blu-ray release. I keep waiting for one for that one, but I loved him in It, and that I don't think I really ever watched the Waltons, but I always knew him from It. This movie is called You're Like My Mother. You're Like My Mother, and it's like a thriller, and this is basically a movie about Patty Duke's character, who, her husband recently died, and she always had kind of meeting to go and meet her husband's family and her husband's mother, but he never did. She never did, and it's kind of a weird thing, and he never really liked to talk about her, so she ends up going back to visit him out in the middle of the snow, the mother in the middle of the snow. And she gets there, and she's real cold and really mean to her. And she's like, "Oh, well, how soon will you'll be leaving?" And she does. There's just something really off. And her sister is there as well, the husband's sister, and she's really odd. And then she starts discovering odd things about this family, and really weird things are there, because she basically gets trapped there because she gets snowed in, and no one can get her out back to her car because she took a bus in, so there's no way to get her back. So she ends up getting stuck there with this family, and she starts discovering odd things about them and weird things about them, and there's and eventually too about the Richard Thomas's character and who he is in relation to the family. I actually thought this was a pretty cool, creepy kind of movie. It has that kind of like Who Slew Annie Rube kind of vibe. It was made around that time. It has on here though new interviews with Richard Thomas and Sia Barbara Allen, who played the sister character in this one. All of them, though, have good transfers, too. Especially Manhunter looked great. This one really, really looked good. And this is a Joan Crawford movie, which I'd never heard of. And it was made by William Castle. And this one had the gimmick of because, all the William Castle movies always had gimmicks like shocking seats. Like they put like things in. If you saw the movie Matinee was basically, John Goodman's character was basically kind of a version of William Castle mixed with the Alfred Hitchcock. And they always had like those kind of things where they had big gimmicks, and like in Huge-O-Rama or Cinerama, all these kind of different things they did. But the gimmick with this one was they would seatbelt people in certain theaters so you couldn't run from the fright. But this movie's called I Saw What You Did and I Know Who You Are. And I actually really liked this movie. It was, one thing about 60s movies, though, it always has that like 60s kind of music, like that kind of like kind of over the top music. And some points, like they stopped doing that in the 70s, but some of that music in the 60s, didn't always fit to the tone of what was happening, because it was always kind of more like music that you hear like Lucy or something. That was one thing I always noticed about 60s movies. Not all 60s movies, but some of them. But this movie is basically about these two girls. The one goes over to the friend's house for a sleepover to spend the night, but then the father's like, "No, you can only stay till 11. But they're there with the one's brother, and they're messing around on the phone. This was, set in I think it was made in 1965, but I think that was right when they still had the switchboard phone, so it was kind of interesting when they were calling. They had somebody actually like putting the cord into the thing, and switching. They were, instead of dialing like a full number, it was like A1358. It was an interesting thing because it was like definitely a product of the time, so it was kind of cool to see that, because it was like something I never really thought of, was like all that switchboarding and all that kind of stuff. But they're prank calling all these people, and it starts out just kind of weird stuff they're saying. Then they start eventually like working up to what they're saying on the people on the phone. They start just calling people going, I know who you are and I saw what you did. Of course, though, they end up saying this guy who just ended up going crazy and killing his girlfriend in the shower, and he basically kills her, like this violent death in there. And then Joan Crawford's character kind of comes over to the house, and she's the kind of guy that guy is actually sort of seeing on the side, and she doesn't know that he did this, and she's like, "Oh, we're going to run away together, and you're going to leave that girl, and you're going to be mine," and all this kind of stuff. But when the guy gets the call from those girls, he's like determined to figure out who it is, and they keep on messing up and, leading the guy to them. I thought it was actually kind of interesting. It was kind of a creepy kind of thing, too. It definitely is like something, too, like during this time, it would make kids, like, I think, like, not want to prank call on the phone. It was like the early days of like the prank call phone kind of movies, because they've done, I did a lot of that, some of them like the 70s and and 80s, but this was like a really early one. It has on here though a photo gallery and a theatrical trailer, and like I said, looks really, really good. I think down the line too, some other William Castle ones are coming out as well. I don't know if they're from Shout Factory, but they might be from Mill Creek. But they really do look great though on Blu-ray. And this is from Shout Factory's line, the TV line. This is one, I had heard about this show for years. I remember The Simpsons made a joke about this show, and I always just wanted to watch this show. And I watched it, and like watched through a bunch of them, and really kind of liked this show. And like I really liked the music stuff. Like I was like, kind of just wanted to see the music scenes and how they were going to have them happen. And so it was kind of reminding me of like those after-school specials a little bit, like the musical numbers. And the thing about, basically the show though is Cop Rock, the complete series, and I legitimately like this show. Like, and I don't know, like I know this is like a super short-lived show that like I think it came on in like 1990 or 91, and it only like aired like 6 episodes or something like that. But this has all the episodes on here, has interviews here as well with 2 of the cast members. But the show is basically a cop show, like the kind of typical kind of cop shows you think of in the 90s, and and even now, that kind of cop show. And then like when they have dramatic numbers, it would kind of be like if the cops arrest somebody, they would end up going into a musical number. And if they're in jail, like at the courthouse kind of deliberating on if the person's guilty or innocent, they're singing these songs. And it's got like songs, it's like people too that sing that you wouldn't expect to sing. So some people are good singers. Some people are like, "Ooh, why are they singing?" And that kind of was what made it interesting, because like some people were really good. Others were like, "When I wonder, will I ever be happy? Sitting here in my corner, thinking about my job as a policeman." I don't know, it's just, there's one guy who's like sitting in this harsh lighting in the kitchen, real depressed. I don't know, and then they had some kind of odd subjects too. They were kind of like this woman that sold her baby and stuff for $50, and it's like kind of like sad stuff too, like sad stuff on top of all this, like some heavy, deep stuff going on, and then these songs, and then like even like the mayor gets into songs. Like it's kind of one of those shows you could kind of become obsessed with, because it's kind of interesting and just such a strange thing, and so before its time. Now the show might actually work a little bit better, because there's more musical kind of shows like Glee and all those kind of things, but at the time this was different. This was very weird and different for the time. Then the next one, from Sony. This is one I was really interested in seeing, because people who were involved with the first VHS film did some of the segments in this one. This is a movie called Southbound, from the filmmakers who brought you VHS. It says, "One endless highway, 5 terrifying tales, all going south." And it even has like radio introductions, like in the movie, in the beginning of the car when they're driving on the highway. That's kind of like Wolfman Jack. He's like, "Along this old highway, there is the southbound time of hell." And I love that kind of thing. But it's basically though an anthology film that's all set on the desert highways, and it's all these different people, and they all kind of have something that's like their baggage in their past. One deals with these 2 guys that were like these, you hear that they've done something terribly wrong, and they're like driving through the desert and keep on like in a loop of seeing the same gas station. They cannot get past this gas station. You see these kind of creaturey kind of like ghostly kind of figures that are floating around, and really creepy stuff. The other segment that I really liked was these girls that were in this band that break down the side of the road and don't know what they're going to do. They get picked up by this kind of like Christian-y kind of family of this husband and wife that pick them up, and they're basically eating dinner with them, and they're eating this strange meat, and it has very bad side effects of them eating this meat. Other one is this girl who's injured on the side of the road, and this guy who picks her up and tries to take her to the hospital, but the hospital is totally abandoned. You're trying to figure out why is this happening, why he's talking on the phone to the paramedics, and I don't know, it was kind of amazing. Like that segment, and that was probably one of the best segments in this movie. This was actually one of, not all the segments were like perfect, but there were some seriously good segments in this that I really liked and stuck with me. Like it was one of those movies after I watched it, I kept thinking about this movie. But it's basically, like I said, you're kind of trying to figure out exactly what is the baggage to these people, because they all are kind of haunted by something. There's something in the past that's haunting them and bothering them, that's kind of making their lives go south, as they say, southbound, and go into hellish kind of state, because they all have something the matter that they've done, or something that maybe someone that died and something that they can't get over or they feel responsible for. But it has on here, though, a commentary track, deleted scenes reel, outtakes reel gallery, and photo gallery. But this is one of the most interesting anthology movies I've seen in a long time, and I always love, too, movies all set in the desert. You know, when they're done right, they have a creepy aspect to them. The next one, this is one a lot of people have asked me about, if I had seen this one, what I thought about this movie. This is from Lionsgate through, you know, A24, and this is the movie called The Witch, or The Vitch. Yeah, because, like, you know, because it's actually with two V's, but the movie's called most people say The Witch, but it's also The Vitch. You could say it like that. But it has on here, though, commentary track on here with the director, which about the folklore of the film, Salem panel, Q&A, and design gallery. But basically the movie, though, it's all set during, I guess you'd say it's like, it's actually New England 1630, but it's set during the time when people were kind of like burning witches at the stake, and it was like people were like accusing people of being witches, and they were all kind of scared of witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. And it's this family. Beginning the movie, they're in this kind of community, this tight-knit, like real religious kind of community. And for some reason, they've basically been shunned out of this community, and they've been made to leave. You're kind of trying to figure out why this has happened, but something has happened. They're kicked out of this community and have to kind of leave. They have no money and they have very little food, so they end up kind of finding this little kind of house in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of the woods with nothing around. Very little food, pretty much nothing. And the one little baby that the family has, because it's like the sister, the two little kids and the baby and the parents. And the one day the oldest sister is watching the baby, and she's playing like hide, you know, peekaboo with the baby. It covers her face, opens her up, and the baby's gone mysteriously missing. And you kind of see this, like, you know, these creepy aspects of this kind of strange character out in the woods, this weird woman, and you see the baby there, and you see like there's something is terrible going on. And it's kind of about them trying to figure out where the baby went, but then they're also like thinking, you know, going and like turning on each other. And it's like this really creepy vibe. It's one of those movies that it's not like a super like jump scare kind of movie. It's more like this creepy, strange, scary aspect to this whole movie that kind of goes throughout the movie and keeps on building and building and building. And it's also set to, you know, during the, like I said, like 1630, so it's kind of like the dialogue is kind of like the Shakespearean kind of dialect a little bit, the way they're talking, because it's real proper English, early English kind of talk. And it kind of just, I don't know, it just for some reason it kind of reminded me of almost thinking of like the Hansel and Gretel period of time, but like gone to hell, like, you know, like almost like another family during that time of Hansel and Gretel, but like the scariest witch in the world, but not like a kiddish witch, like what it might have been really like if there was a witch. I don't know, something like, it was just giving me that kind of vibe, but really cool, creepy movie. People ask if it was creepy. It was, and really cool aspects of building up to what ends up happening in this movie. The next one from Disney, this is, you know, the finest hours, the impossible rescue. This is based on a true story. This is basically, though, you know, Chris Pine is in this movie as a works for the Coast Guard, and there's this, you know, Casey Affleck is out on this ship that's like this oil rig ship, and there's this set during the winter, and there's this horrible accident that happens, and the ship ends up getting stuck out there and splitting in half and starts to sink, and they've lost contact on the ship. They don't know what they're going to do on the ship, and they're basically trying to figure out anything they can to keep the ship afloat for as long as they can, till hopefully they can get a call out and someone can rescue them. And it's with Chris Pine's character, and Eric Bana is like the head of his group, you know, the National Guard group, and they're kind of figuring out how in the world they're going to get to them, because the water is so rough, and they're not sure how they can get the boat out there, and how, if they're going to be able to actually figure out how to rescue them. It also has the love story aspect too, to Chris Pine and the girl that he wants to get married to, so that kind of aspect is there as well, because she's kind of worried that the man she wants to marry, if he goes out there, he may end up dying, because it's really a terrible idea to go out there, because it's such a dangerous situation. And it's pretty much, you know, just the trip out there to try and get them, and also, you know, the people on the ship trying to figure out whatever they can do to stay alive there as long as they can and keep the ship from sinking. It has on here, though, a true story feature out in the movie about the true people from this movie's based on. Talks about the cast members, talking about their bonds during the shooting of this movie. Also has a number of other featurettes on here and deleted scenes, but a pretty cool like rescue mission kind of movie, like I said, based on a true story. And the next one from Warner Brothers, and this is called How to Be Single, and this has Dakota Johnson, Rebel Wilson, Allison Brie, and Leslie Mann. And this is basically Dakota Johnson, who was in 50 Shades of Grey. And she basically, and when she was in college, just in college, like the first time, right when she gets there, she ends up meeting this guy that she falls in love with and she stayed with all throughout school. When they're finally done out of school, years out of that, she kind of comes up with this idea that she's never really experienced what it's like to be, to be single, and she kind of wants to take a break from the relationship. But at the same time, she's not totally sure why she wants to take this break, but she kind of feels like she has to do this. So she ends up, leaving the boyfriend and going off on her own and going back and living with her sister until she can kind of figure out what she wants to do. And she ends up getting this job at this firm place, and she ends up meeting Rebel Wilson's character, and she's kind of like a bad influence on her, because they're going out drinking, and she's kind of teaching her everything she knows about picking up guys and stuff like that. And it also deals with Leslie Mann's character, trying to, because she meets this older guy that's like, this guy that's way younger than him, and she starts dating him, and kind of her problems with accepting the fact that this guy really just wants to date her, even though he's so much younger. And Allison Brie is this woman who is always at the bar down below, Dakota Johnson's, where she lives, the apartment, who's always trying to find the Mr. Right, like trying to find basically her husband. I actually, though, really like this movie. I thought it was actually a pretty different take on romantic comedies, and not like totally stereotypical, at least to me. Has on here, though, featurettes on his movie, Rebel Wilson outtakes, the lead scenes, in a gag reel. The next one from Umbrella Entertainment, this is an Australian release, but it's actually, though, region free, though, because I checked it on the the PS4, which is region free, so it played fine. So this one and the next one are both region free releases, but this is, and also does not have the blue tint, because a lot of people always were complaining about the release of this from Twilight Time. They had the blue tint, and it was like something they did to it, or the Tom Savini wanted to do, that made the movie really blue looking. But this is George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, but this is, George Romero wrote this one and produced this, but this is directed by Tom Savini, so this is the 1990, I think it was 1990 remake. And I had not watched this movie in so many years. I totally forgot that Bill Moseley was in the beginning of this movie, too, as the brother who's like, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." I totally forgot that he did that. But I really like this movie. And Tony Todd, basically, though, the movie, though, is, like I said, a remake of Night of the Living Dead. The Barbara who goes to visit her mom's gravesite, zombies start coming up. She runs and hides out into the nearby cabin she comes across, where Tony Todd is in there, and they kind of barricade themselves in. There's also people in the basement that are down there. There's all these scuffles between the one guy in the basement, saying, "You should just barricade yourself down there with us," and they're all fighting with each other. And it's all the zombies just coming around inside trying to get in. They're boarding up the place and everything. But Tony Todd, when you see this in HD too, you really notice he put himself into this role so much. Like, his character too is like crying throughout the movie. Like, when he's like talking about what's going on and everything, he's tearing up. Like, I don't know, he did such a good job in this movie. Like I said, you don't notice that as much when you watch this in standard def, but when you watch it in HD, you really see how much he put himself into this movie with the tears and everything. But it has on here, though, a bunch of new features on here: a Dead Walk featurette, audio commentary with Tom Savini, a new interview with Tom Savini, some classic behind the scenes featurette, actress with the main actress that plays Barbara, a brand new interview. And the next one from Umbrella Entertainment as well, and this is one that I always remember the TV show of this. I had never actually seen the movie, and it's called Alien Nation, with James Caan and Andy Pataki and Terrence Stamp. And it was kind of interesting movie. It was kind of like a police kind of movie, but like it's like in the future, and like this aliens kind of came to Earth, and they're basically just living with us, and they all have like that unique look. All of them have this unique kind of look to themselves, and they basically are just kind of working there. And James Caan, whose partner just got killed by these people, Mandy Patinkin comes there, and he's like one of the aliens, has the look, the shaved head, or the bald head with like the, it's like this certain look the aliens have. They all look like it. Living there and like working in the 7-Elevens and everything. It's actually kind of interesting movie. But they kind of team up together, and James Caan doesn't like aliens at all. Doesn't want to work with them, but they kind of reluctantly work together, trying to solve the case of who killed the one's partner, James Caan's partner. And that's essentially what it was. I thought it was actually kind of an interesting futuristic one. I thought, though, they didn't like show some of like as much stuff with aliens as I hoped. Like, they kind of showed in the beginning some of the stuff the aliens were doing, but I kind of wish I could see a little bit bit more. Like, I kind of feel like it would have been cool if it had like more of like a Total Recall kind of vibe to it or something. But they did like a bunch of different things with this. So they did like a short-lived TV series after this. They did like a couple spin-off movies as well. Like, I think like in the like mid '90s or so. The next one from Blue Underground is this is one I had not watched in a super long time. This has Klaus Kinski in this movie, Susan George, you know, who I always think of from Straw Dogs, and I think Fright she was in, a couple other movies. This movie's called Venom, and this is like the DVD Blu-ray combo pack. This is the collector's edition one. Looks really good on Blu-ray. Both two, Night of the Living Dead and Alien Nation, both look great on Blu-ray. But this is basically, though, about these people that are planning on trying to kidnap this rich family's kid and hold him for ransom. But this kid kind of collects animals and has snakes and things like that. And in the beginning of the movie, he goes to pick up this snake from the pet store, and the woman there is like this older woman, gets all confused and ends up giving the kid this venomous snake instead of like this harmless house snake. So the kid ends up taking the snake back to the house, and Klaus Kinski and the guys who are going to be holding him, you know, collecting him and holding him hands for ransom, end up basically stuck in there because the snake ends up getting loose, biting Susan George's character. And then why this is all happening, the police find out that they're in there and come to the house, so they're trapped inside this house. They can't go outside because the police are out there, and yet they have to hide, be careful where they're in the house because this poison snake is slithering around the house. Pretty cool, creepy idea too, of being stuck in this house with this snake, and no matter what you do, you can't leave and anything as well. But it has on here though the features from the old DVD release on here, the commentary track, theatrical trailers, a collectible booklet in here. But really like this movie. Like I said, I had not watched this one in a really long time. The next two from Olive Films, these are ones I hadn't seen since I saw these in theaters. They're both, you know, Frankie Muniz films. These were right around the time of like Malcolm in the Middle, and you know, the first movie has Hilary Duff around the same time as Lizzie McGuire. So these are like really, like at the time, these were like really big movies because Frankie Muniz was really big at the time. It's Agent Cody Banks, you know, 1 and Cody Banks 2, Destination London, and it's basically is you know, Frankie Muniz is a kind of an undercover spy who goes and like kind of solves missions and things like that, and has all kinds of gadgets and stuff. In this one, he has to try and get to the bottom of this scientist who is basically, he's like making a he's making some kind of like this device, and like they wanted to try and get it, like, because I'm mixing the two up. The other one was like a mind control device, but essentially though what the movies are though is just kind of a spy movies with Agent Cody Banks, and then Anthony Anderson too was in the second movie as kind of like the guy who was like taking care of and watching Cody Banks so he didn't kind of get into trouble and stuff. The first one though, Hilary Duff didn't come back for the sequel one, but I don't know, I really like these movies. They have all the features they were on the original DVD releases of them, but really fun movies that I just remembered really liking when they first came out. The next one from Olive Films as well, and this is a movie called Rich Kids, and this has a bunch of people in this one. John Lithgow's in this movie, Paul Dooley, and it's like I said, it's called Rich Kids. It's about these two kids that are friends in New York, and both of them are having kind of problems with their family. Both their parents, the one parents are like divorced. The boy's family, no, the girl's family are kind of like in the midst of getting separated. They're kind of, you know, they kind of don't want to tell the daughter about this is going on. They don't want her to find out, but at the same time, she kind of knows something is up. These kids basically become friends. They're kind of bonding over their family issues and stuff like that. And it's kind of just about them in New York and the family dramas and stuff like that that are going on, and their friendship and things like that. But a pretty cool movie. Like I said, one I had never seen before. The next one, Scott Baio and Willie Ames movie called Zapped, and I hadn't watched this one in a long time either. All these ones look great, good transfers on all these. Zapped is a really fun movie. This is like a teen comedy one about, you know, Scott Baio, who's like this inventor, and he's making like kind of weird experimentations with growing things and all these kind of things he's doing for the science program. And Willie Ames kind of mixes up the two, dumps like a soda and this thing into the things that he's experimenting on, and he's kind of discovered that this ability for like mice and stuff like that to have telepathy and be able to move things with their mind. And of course, though, because he mixed up the chemicals, they end up spilling and getting all over Scott Baio and turning him to have these abilities to move things with his mind and all that kind of stuff. And it becomes a huge thing, and like the parents see him doing this and they think he's possessed, and it's kind of like they're going and getting back at the bullies and using these powers to get revenge and stuff like that. Just a really fun movie. The next one, this one, I'll put the link below for you guys can get this one, but this is on, DVD, this is on Blu-ray, this is has a on demand, and also has a VHS release. And this is a movie, Patton Oswalt has a little cam in this movie. It's a pretty fun movie, and you can watch it two different ways. The one, like in the VHS kind of way, which is intended to watch, and then one where it's cleaned up in, the way they shot it, though, in HD, but there was supposed to be like a lost 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, shot on video film called Dude, Bro, Party Massacre 3. There never was any other ones, but that's like the joke of this. And in the opening of the movie, it talks about how like this was a lost movie that was only ever seen once. All the copies were destroyed, and like this one guy taped it off TV in the middle of the night. And it's pretty much, though, a movie, like, because it's, like I said, it's supposed to be part 3. There's this like killer that's going and killing these guys at this frat house, and they keep killing them and they keep coming back, and it's them, the killer, coming back again, yet again, and going after them. And this movie too tried to set the record. I think it succeeded of having the most deaths caught on screen in all-time history. There's all these different deaths and really cool, crazy effects of these kids, these college kids, getting killed off, and the one's supposed to be like the one's twin brother that died in the first movie. It's a fun, ridiculous movie. Total, like I said, throwback to the shot-on-video movies of the 80s and early 90s. Has on here, though, director's commentary as well, the making of the movie, deleted scenes, gag reels, but a really fun throwback kind of film like that. The next one from E1 through Uncorked Films is A Haunting in Cawdor, and it's, I feel like wanting to say that's Old Store Cawdor, but no, it's Cawdor. But it's basically, though, about this girl who gets sent to this kind of, it's like a acting kind of camp where they clean up things at this camp and like work together, and they put on plays to kind of work out their problems, because they all have like issues, because they're kids that were in the juvenile detention center that are basically on the cusp of going to jail, but they kind of put them there to kind of work together to kind of like work through their problems before they can enter society. And the girl who gets sent there in this group, she starts having like weird visions there and seeing weird things at this camp, and they're going on to put on this play that they end up, she ends up getting the lead for in this play in this camp. And it's kind of like doing this, it's kind of bringing up old things. He finds this VHS tape that something had happened in the past with this play, and the one woman who comes by the camp is like, you can't put on this play, it's cursed, you know what happened the last time. It's kind of got like the Gallows kind of feel a little bit, to kind of like what was going on with that, but it's like these kids, like I said, at this camp there where weird things start happening to them one by one at this camp. I thought it was actually pretty interesting. I really liked the guy who was like the head of the camp, not like the main head guy, but the one who was like in charge of all the kids, and he was kind of like yelling at them. And it's kind of interesting too, because it was like he was like talking dirty to them, and like he like didn't care. And I don't know, I don't know, I thought there was kind of some fun aspects to this one. The next one from Mill Creek, and this is a show I had never seen. I think I had seen like maybe like a clip of it before, but I think it was on in like I don't remember what year it was on. But it ran for 4 different seasons, and this is on Blu-ray. It starred, Ernest Borgnine was the star of this one, and Jean Michael Vincent, who was in one of those, I think the original Mechanic film. I don't know if it was that or one of the movies with Charles Bronson. I can't remember which one it was, but this show is called Airwolf: The Complete Season. Like I said, it has on here all the 4, each season, and it has a couple, I think it was 79 episodes of the whole show, but it's basically like Jan Michael Vincent, who was kind of talked into, because they would help him find his brother, to fly around this kind of like futuristic kind of airplane, kind of helicopter that goes around and kind of is taken to areas to kind of solve problems problems and kind of rescue people and all these kind of different things. And he's on there in the ship with, in the helicopter with Ernest Borgnine. And I always love Ernest Borgnine. Ernest Borgnine is really cool in this show. Like I said, though, it's all 79 episodes, and really, really looks good on Blu-ray. It's one of those things where it's like seeing this on Blu-ray. I feel like that you will probably, hopefully down the line, start seeing a lot more like 80s and 90s kind of shows that were shot on film. So they have a good print that they can use to make Blu-rays coming out. But like I said, this is Airwolf, the complete series. The next one from MVD is Convoy of Woman. And this is an interesting movie because this was never released, as far as I was reading into this, on anything in the U.S. before. And it's kind of about, it's set like during it was a 70s film, but it was sent during the, I guess it was like I don't know exactly what year, it was like 1600s or so, and it was basically about these guys that were going and kidnapping women to send over to America to kind of put them into prostitution, like to force them into prostitution. They would go and like gather them up and like take them on this ship and get them over there. But of course, though, the women that they end up getting, it kind of backfires on them and turns into a whole thing about them against the people that have gone after them. That's sort of what it is. It's slightly hard to follow some of it, but I thought it was a kind of a cool one. It kind of had the vibe a little bit of like Mark of the Devil, that kind of vibe a little bit to me, because I think it was made around the same time. It had that sort of feel to it a little bit. Like I said, this is Convoy of Woman. It was cool too to watch this one too, because like I said, it was never released on anything before in the US. And the last one from Brink is The Devil's Woods. This is basically about a group of these friends, and they kind of have like all these kind of issues that they have going on, and they end up planning to go out to this kind of festival kind of thing, go on a trip out, and they end up to camp out in the middle of the woods, where they end up getting out there, and they kind of have like issues along the way and get like lost there, and then end up going out into the woods. And as soon as they start getting out to the area too, they all start kind of seeing things, like they're seeing like these visions of things, and like they're seeing this one woman who like isn't there, or like all of a sudden she's there and then she isn't. So it's kind of like odd stuff happens to them as soon as they start going out there. This movie's also an Irish film, which was pretty cool. And they get out there though, and because in the beginning of the movie you saw this one person getting killed by this guy, and of course though it's like they're out there, and then there's this person coming for them one by one out there in the woods. Pretty cool, like creepy throwback kind of film. Like I said, this one is The Devil's Woods. But anyway though, guys, that's all for this video. Thanks again for watching, subscribing, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.